still morning, 11:35. We have a select quality group here tonight, this afternoon, to our 7th of 7 community consultations. My name's Sonia Petering. I think I've met most of you, and I'm one of the panel members with my colleague and chairman Bernard Teague and Professor John Catford. The three of us are the panel members for the inquiry. We're supported by a team of people, not that many, but a few quality people. So we have Lana, she's involved with the community consultations, and if you have any questions about submissions, which we'll talk about in a moment, or anything to do with getting in touch with the inquiry, please speak to Lana. We've also got Elizabeth, who's heading up our secretariat. We have Brooke, who's doing some of the research, and Joe, also doing some of the research. So we have some people who are helping to investigate some of the issues that we have before us. We've found the community consultations to be very, very valuable, so thank you very much for your time to be able to contribute to today's session and the community members that contributed in the previous 6. There's been a host of information and facts and opinions that are put to us for us to be able to investigate, and a whole range of matters from the mine right through to health issues, to longer term, to insurance, to some of the economics. So there's been quite a lot of information, and we're very grateful to be able to receive that from you firsthand. It's, I think, as Diane said to me, so much better to be able to hear that from people rather than just to read through a volume of material. So we'll be here for the next hour and a half to just hear from you, and we have Chris Cotter, who is going to be helping facilitate that discussion. Chris will explain the process and how we're going to be able to use that time productively. We have a lady who, Melinda, who is a community health nurse. So if in the context of this morning's conversation you feel that you need to have a conversation with a nurse, then Melinda will be able to have a conversation with you. So again, I don't think there's anything further to comment. Chris will then take us through the process this morning. The cameras are for our benefit, so there aren't any media present in the room that are being taking photographs. There is a local representative from the Express, I think, aren't you, Rebecca? Yeah. So the cameras are for our benefit so that we can capture and record the information that's provided to us. And the summaries of the consultations we'll be putting up on our website. So Chris will also explain our website and accessing that and how the information is going to be disseminated back to you. So thank you again for being here, taking up the time to provide us with your information, and we look forward to your contributions. And if you feel that you haven't had an opportunity to say what you wanted to, there is a process called the submission process. Chris will go through that with you and how that you can get in contact with us through that way. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to hearing from you over the next hour and a half.
Thank you, and can I add my very warm welcome and thanks in advance for people who have made time to come along today. There's a question about whether or not people who have been to other sessions should be here. The answer is absolutely. So if you've been part of the process elsewhere, you are very, very welcome. And every time we've had a group together like this, we have come away learning and growing through the conversation that you've had and the questions that we've been able to pose and the answers that we get from you. So please feel that if you've been part of this before... In fact, it's lovely to see some people who have come back another time, so we really appreciate you making that bit of extra time. I'm Chris Cotter, and I have a number of associations with this region. I work with the Gippsland Community Leadership Program. I speak to that group every year, and I know that Barry Rogers and others have put out the call to have graduates of that program come along and support the exercise, and it's always fabulous to have people come along and do that. So I'm very grateful where that's occurred, and it is a very important part of the network in this region. To have your own community leaders is very special, so I'm very grateful for that. I also work with the education community a fair bit, so I have come to know probably some of your kids or some of the teachers of your kids in some of the other work that I've done as well. So I'm, whilst I live in Melbourne, I'm no stranger to the region, and wish I was here under other circumstances, because this has been a difficult period for people. So hope that you'll stay with me for the next hour and a half till about 1 o'clock and work through our process. Can I take your attention straight away to what you have on the table, because there are a couple of important documents and I'd really like to draw your attention to that here and now. The first is that your table will have the terms of reference for the inquiry, and that's for you to refer to or to take, and we have spare copies of all of these documents so that for people who couldn't get here today, or friends that or others that you know of that want to become involved, please make sure that you take spare copies of these documents. They're there for you. So terms of reference for the inquiry. The other is, you'll see on the tables for each of you a small card, a small piece of paper, and I really recommend that you take this and maybe take a couple, because this is the way of staying in touch with the inquiry. It's got the web details on it, it's got the contact details on it, and it means that you can stay in touch with what's going on in the inquiry, and it's also an important place for the inquiry to publish its information that we'll collate the other side of all of these sessions. So take a couple of those. There's also a submission cover sheet, and we've got plenty of spares of these too. So occasionally at these meetings people have actually brought along documents that they'd like us to take from them as submissions, and if you could put a cover sheet on that, that really helps the tracking. But you can also take these away. In fact, we've had people who have put in a submission only to say, well, I've now heard something else, can I put in another submission? And the answer is, of course, yes. So cover sheets for submissions. Submissions are due on the 12th of May, if you would take note of that, 12th of May. So there's nearly a month, which is a fair period of time to get those submissions in, and the inquiry is really eager and interested to see what comes forward from the submission process as well as this particular process. You also have at the table 3 questions on a sheet that looks like this. And those are 3 questions that have taken us into the heart of the matters for the inquiry, but have also given people in the communities where we've been an opportunity to think aloud, talk, come up with advice, suggestions, insights, experiences, memories, issues that they want to raise for the inquiry. And what I'm going to suggest is a very simple process where I'm going to recommend that you have maybe 30 minutes or so at your tables to talk through those questions and come up with your responses. But then at the other end, if we've missed anything, if those questions haven't given you the opportunity to say everything that you've wanted to, if we've moved too quickly past an issue that you think we really need to spend more time concentrating on, then I'll open up the meeting and we'll make sure that we pick that up. So the other important resource that you have at your table is a scribe. So if I can just ask the scribes just to raise their hands so that you know who your scribes are at your table. They've got a very important role in all of this. They are your listeners and your recorders and your note takers, and we take those notes at the end of the session. And so you'll see your scribes working quite hard throughout the next hour or so, and we thank them in advance because these people have volunteered their time and commitment to make this happen, so I really appreciate that. As Sonia said, the camera recording equipment is for the inquiry. I'm going to request that if there's any media presence in the room, that no photographs are taken during the sessions. People are very sensitive about that, and I really want to respect that. So that's an important issue. I really want you to know that where we're taking photographs or recording, and later on when we're using microphones, it is absolutely for the purpose of this particular inquiry. So we have until 1 o'clock as our advertised time, and I want to give you the opportunity to work your way through those 3 questions. I recommend, I'm not bothered about which order you take them in, but I do recommend going through them from 1 through to 3. You'll see that there's a kind of natural flow around picking up information and pulling that together at the other end. The first thing I'd like you to do before you get going on that, however, is to pick one spokesperson at the table. One person who will be prepared to pull together what your table has to say, and then as I go around in a little while, just into the microphone, give us a summary of what your table had to say about each of those 3 questions. I'll leave that entirely up to you to pick who that person's going to be for the next while, but I suggest that that's the very first thing that you do so that that person doesn't have to play catch-up further on. I'm going to get out of your way in a moment and let you have that conversation, and then I hope you won't mind, but it's been very valuable for John, Sonia and Bernie to come around the room and sit in with and just listen to what people have said and come up closer to your issues that way, so that, if that's okay with you, that'll happen throughout the session. And I just wondered, is there anyone with a particular question at this end of the process that I can clear up for you? Okay, my other role here is to try to make the time that we have together as efficient and as comfortable as possible. If there's anything that I can do that can improve your comfort or circumstances over the next while, then I hope that you'll let me know about that. Okay, I'm going to get out of your way. Pick your spokesperson. Work your way through those 3 questions. I'll do a time check as we go along, and then I'll come back to you in a while and we'll see what you have to say to us in the response to those 3 questions and any other issues that you want to pick up. Okay, thanks very much. Over to you. Let's have a look at the picture that we can build up from your conversations by each of those 3 questions. So what I'd like to do now is to check in with each of your spokespeople. What I'm going to ask is that you take the microphone because it helps us with recording the session. And if you wouldn't mind standing as well, it just helps our audio people pick that up. So if I can come around and just pick up with each of the spokespeople your answer to the first question. So what worked well? What met your expectations? What worked out the way you would have hoped for? So who's our spokesperson at this table? John, all right, we might start with you. Now, if you don't mind standing, John, and just take us through your list. Now, what I'm going to do after John has spoken is make sure that we're just growing the list rather than repeating the same sorts of issues. So, okay, John, take us through.
So have your pens ready and tick them off. We felt that the weather warnings leading up to the event were very good, and they alerted people to be prepared. We also thought that ABC local radio provided good information. We felt the municipalities had checked that relevant people were available, yes, if they were needed. Social media worked well, but there was also the problem with social media that there were many rumours on there, so being able to check the authenticity of things.
Did your table have a view about how to deal with all the rumours on social media and how you work your way through that?
Yes, definitely. The way to deal with it is have proper information so we don't have so many questions.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pick that up in question 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
thanks.
And that was sort of illustrated by the fact that it was needed because there was nearly 2,000 members in the first few days, so people were really looking to that. It was initial
communications, is it?
Communication to ensure. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the initial community consultations were useful to have, even if the second one was sort of quite hostile. We still felt that they were very good. CFA volunteers and the immediate response worked well. CFA had helicopters ready, not that they used them all when they could. Emergency services we felt worked well, and catering for the various volunteers, such as the Red Cross and everything, were good people as well. So
thank you. Okay, now I'll keep coming around and ask the next spokesperson. So all that we're looking for now is to add to that particular list rather than repeat. Now, who's our spokesperson at this table? Simon. Would you mind standing, Simon, and taking us through your list? Just pick up now what we haven't already heard about.
Okay, the community groups worked well. The community members worked well in getting the information out to people. The inquiry is... Sorry, my palm.
Lana's taking these down over
Hi,
here.
Lana. I did it last time. The inquiry is working well. There certain elements that worked well is the taxi vouchers for health home care clients to be able to go to their appointments, the free public transport to get out of town, the assistance worked well in certain elements regarding people with healthcare cards, people with, who are home care clients to get assistance to get out of town, so the money part of it. The free entry to attractions also work well to give people a break.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. Who's our spokesperson over here on this table?
We didn't have anything that has
Nothing new to that list? What about over here? Who's our spokesperson here? And is there something on your list that we haven't already heard about, Amanda? Would you mind using the microphone and standing and letting us know if there's anything that we can still add to that list?
I think they've covered most things for most of it. It's just really the ABC News and the CFA who was the real main efforts to help us out with things. So.
Okay, thank you. So is there anyone who would like to add to that list, spokesperson or not? Anything else that you'd like to let us know about that you think worked well and you'd like us to hear about that? Thanks, Tina. What worked well?
Could I just add the Community Assessment Centre at Saskia Way, the Ambulance Assessment Centre?
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wants to add to that list? So I'll just come round there. What else worked well, Graham?
As far as communication, the local radio station Gold 1242, which is part of the ACE radio network.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I'll come over there. Just pick up the last couple of points about what worked well. Thank you.
The Education Department worked well with evacuating Commercial Road Primary School within the first week and relocating them to Moe. And the Latrobe Shire with the early childhood centres and childcares, also closing them and relocating them as well to get the kids out of it.
Okay, thanks very much, Deb. Anything else that you'd like us to note that worked well? Well, I might just stay at this table. Let's now go through the list of what you thought didn't work quite so well, that didn't meet your expectations. A little bit longer? Yeah. All right, we'll start with John.
Okay, here we go. GDF Sewers didn't have manpower resources to fight fires themselves and had to rely on the CFA. Remember, these are perceptions. We don't.
No, I understand.
Yep. Yeah. Government didn't respond until the media attention was drawn to the issue. Coal mines are supposed to have air quality monitoring already, and it didn't appear that that was accessed at any time during the fire. Driffield extensions, when they did the extension to the open cut mine, it meant that there was no access for the firefighters if a fire started on the western flank, which meant they had to drive all the way back into Yanar before they could access the fire on the other side of the Moore River. No centralised government information source. Social media was unreliable. That's back to that point we made earlier. Fire safety precautions, lack of sprinklers, rehab of the mine, a major fuel source for problems. And we contrasted that to what happened in the Yallourn open cut. That they seem to be on top of it. So no response to mental health issues at all for people under siege. And the Chief Health Officer should have recognised mental health issues but didn't mention them once in any of the briefings. Considering people were under siege for more than a month. Conflicting health information, EPA data versus Rosemary Lester's saying everything was okay. So again, we've got, this conflict of information there, and in between it all we've got social media trying to sort it out. Instilling faith in the community towards government. Department of Health, Rosemary Lester. Lord Mayor not present and not engaged in the process. Division between communities, Morwell South and east of Morwell was seen as different areas, even though the smoke was everywhere. No, but there didn't seem to be any basis for the discrimination between the two. Discrimination of age, gender, location, healthcare card status. There was a lot of confusion around who can access care and who couldn't. And again, no presence of GDF at all in any of the public information session. Discrimination of workers. Government workers were either relocated or told to stay home, whereas other workers had to take their own sick leave. Many affected members of the community not participating in consultation processes. So there's many people that don't like this sort of forum that have a view but don't feel comfortable expressing it here. And they're not represented at the consultations. People not comfortable about putting submissions in, so not quite sure how we'll get around that, but it needs to be identified as an issue. Thank you.
Well, and before you leave that, if that last point is an issue and we're really very conscious of trying to get to as many people and as many voices and as many different experiences and different locations, and that last question about what can we do from here on in, and when we're looking into the future, how we actually reach out to and collect those kinds of impressions and that kind of input. So submissions are one way, meetings like this are another. I mean, you might have some suggestions that would actually help us on the way through to that. So can I pick that up in the last question? But I'll just get you to think about that, because the inquiry is very keen to really get some ideas and suggestions and advice about how to make that work really well for as many people as we possibly can.
No worries.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Simon, can you add to our list of what didn't work quite so well?
The confusion didn't work well. The government's slow response and no response.
Can I just... Confusion about?
It was confusion about the conflicting information and the information given. It was more like information overload and then all stop, no information. And contradictory information as well. Rosemary Lester, read the pollution and lies. The mercury sampling from the pit fire, the EPA said there was no monitoring, and then phoned and changed their mind and said there is no monitoring. So we don't know when they started monitoring. Coal fires burn forever, and it takes a long time to put out. For example, Old Faithful, 40 years burning. Response should have been much quicker. Was told in 2006 that it would never happen again, and yet we have a fire now. The DPI is who signs off on the mine each year or each time it does its assessments or checks. We need to find out. Oh, sorry, I'll read this out so it makes it easier. Find out at the moment. Oh no, that's an extra note on top of it. Sorry. So yeah, the DPI, who is the regulators for the mine, are obviously signing off on things which maybe haven't been done. For example, was mentioned the sprinklers. How do they sign off on rehabilitation of mine when there's no sprinkler system? How do they sign off on rehabilitation of mine when it's just grass growing over coal? How do they sign off, on a few trees planted here and there?
So your table wanted clarity around how that sign-off takes place? Is that
it'd be good,
the issue?
Clarity on how it's signed off, and also on what rehabilitation actually means, or what their standards of rehabilitation are to what it should be.
Thank you, that's helpful. Yep.
I think that's everything. Everything else has already been said.
Okay, thank you. Anything that we've missed that didn't work quite so well? Would you mind standing and just helping us with our...
The only thing we had to add to that list was the absence of a lot of specialised firefighting equipment from here. A lot of it had to be brought in from Tasmania and South Australia, New South Wales. It's like, well, we had coal mines. Why wasn't that equipment already here to be used immediately?
Okay, thank you. Anything that we've missed here? Anything else to grow our list, Amanda, from your table?
Our people on this table think that the evacuation was way too late with the fire, especially the nursing homes and that. It took a few weeks to get them out of the town, which they're the older people and that. You'd expect them to be evacuated out as soon as the fires and that start. You don't want to have a whole heap of sick people in the town. And if you can get the older people out and the younger people out ASAP, it makes it a lot safer and that around. There's not so many people running around the town then either. The residents said that the free train rides and everything were all good and that to be able to get out of town, but a lot of people had to walk from their house to the trains and stuff and weren't aware of the taxi thing that was available. So a bit more information in regards to the free services and stuff available to the elderly residents and other residents around the town. The evacuations of the schools, yes, they did evacuate Commercial Road down there and St Mary's? Sacred Heart, that's the one. My daughter goes to St Vincent's, and they're right up on top of the hill, and they weren't evacuated at all. They ended up getting sent out for maybe 2 days over a couple of weeks, and I didn't see that was good enough for the kids. They tried to keep them inside and stuff. A lot of them, by the end of the time, were actually going really crazy, and they didn't know what to do with them. The schools were saying there's a lot of bullying and pushing and everything going on. They just didn't know how to handle it in the end, and I think all of the schools in the town, if a crisis like this, need to be evacuated to get them out. And evacuating them down to Moe is a good idea, but I moved up to Hayfield for a little while, and we were still shutting doors and windows up in Hayfield. Stratford Primary School up there was still copping smoke and stuff as well, so it's not just our town that's been evacuated.
Evacuation of, I think, all students is what I think I'm picking up from you.
Yep. Yes, that is the main issue.
Okay, Amanda, anything else on your list that can grow our picture of what your table thought didn't work quite so well, that we haven't yet heard?
No, I think that covers everything.
Okay, thank you. All right, now, does anyone else think that we might have missed any particular issues, themes, topics? John, can I come back to you and then I'll pick up on any others that we've still got?
Two issues. One is the towns beyond Morwell were heavily impacted by smoke and particulate matter for extended periods, and I mentioned at our table that Lee and Gatha, for example, whenever the wind was blowing in that direction, had 3 days of very thick smoke, according to the EPA standards, were well beyond safe levels. Churchill was the same, and many of the other communities around here were also impacted. And the other thing was that, according to a letter I got from the EPA back in 3rd of December last year, on the request that I made in regard to air quality monitoring, they have told me that all the power generators in the Latrobe Valley also conduct air quality monitoring and have their own air quality monitoring stations. If they've had that, why weren't they accessed earlier?
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Heather, did you want to come in on this? What didn't work quite so well?
Just a couple of things. I'm a teacher. And
Heather, would you mind standing, please? It's just helpful.
At St Vincent's, actually, and I was asked to go out into the playground myself and to call it, because we had an independent testing facility, but it was put in the staff room where there were no teachers or students all day, so I had to go and call it myself. I'm not capable of doing that, but just by my own nose, I knew that the classrooms were smokier than outside at that particular time, so we went out even though it was bad. Also with vets, in the second week I'd rang all the vets in the Latrobe Valley, and none of them, they were all told not to give any advice whatsoever. And, some of them got back to me after they talked to their superiors and they couldn't tell us anything. And then the week after I asked if they could just put out a fact sheet and they said they couldn't do that either. It wasn't until much later that they had said...
Do we know why?
They said that they were told not to speak to that. The same with Gippsland Water I'd called because there were people having exposed water tanks, obviously, for their cattle and so on. They said that they didn't have the protocols to test the water, even though they're this close to a mine. We've got Gippsland Water. They didn't have the protocols to test that, so I think that's something that needs to be rectified.
Thanks very much, Heather. Anyone else wants to come in on that? Just want to make sure that everybody's had a go to contribute to that particular question and grow our list that way. Okay, thank you. Now, what about the future? What about from here on in? What needs to happen? What can be improved? Where do we need to look a little harder to make the future safer and better? Amanda, do you want to start us off on what your table had to say about that? Thanks very much.
Arsonists have been around for years. They should have more security around the perimeter to stop anything occurring and getting into Hazelwood Mine at all. We were talking about there should be a reshape of the northern batter to create a break from it stopping getting in, and that way it would be easier for them to cut down the grass and that as well. On fire ban days, they're saying that they're actually going to keep the sprinklers and stuff in around there, but they need to make sure that everything is fully watered down and preventing things from jumping across batters because we don't want it getting into the town. Is there going to be anything to check the health of the residents in Morwell over the coming years? We just want to make sure that it's not just going to be something that's here and now. It could be something that comes out in 5 or 10 years' time, and we just want to make sure all the residents are covered and looked after. What's going to be done for the cleaning up after this? Because most residents are still struggling to get clean-ups on their houses, and they don't know how long it's going to last for. Is it only going to last for a month with the clean-ups? Is it going to still be 6 months down the track? They're still going to be cleaning up. The toxic ashes and stuff that are being thrown up in the air with the street sweepers and that, it's still getting spread around the town, doesn't matter what they're doing at the moment. So we just want to make sure that something's going to come out of that one as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. I might come around this way this time. Improvements, what's got to happen going forward?
So one of the things we talked about in terms of how to prevent the fire, how to prevent a similar fire in the future is to do proper rehabilitation of the mine, as Simon alluded to. You know, apparently the sprinklers got removed, and GDF Sewers said, well, they got removed because that area had been rehabilitated. Well, if it was rehabilitated, why did it catch on fire? So it's about, is the rehabilitation work getting done? What standard is it being done to? You know, is the government actually regulating it properly? Are they forcing them to do it? The mining licence for the mine says that they've got to do progressive rehabilitation, but that can't just be planting a couple of trees here and there. It's actually got to be, you know, safe so it doesn't catch on fire. And more broadly, just, you know, general proper regulation by the government on other matters as well. So better monitoring by the EPA, especially the PM 2.5, sort of in, you know, both in Morwell and other areas in Latrobe Valley. Another one that we had was just sort of a standing response strategy from the government. I mean, obviously, you know, they've known that coal mines can catch on fire, so in the same way that people in, you know, heavily forested areas have bushfire readiness plans, they should probably have a coal mine fire readiness plan just ready to go. So hopefully after this inquiry and everything else, there'll be a pretty strong list of, all right, well, this is what needs to happen. We know these fires can happen. So if a fire breaks out, this is what monitoring we need to do straight away. This is the message we need to get out. This is how we need to get the message out there. You know, people evacuate when we reach this level of certain particulates, whatever. You know, evacuate, don't evacuate. What is the firefighting response strategy that should be established from the get-go so that they don't need to sort of flap about with their hands in the air for the first week and a half going, oh, we don't know what's going on. Like, you know, we can't go back to that. We've already had that. So if it happens again, which it shouldn't, that response strategy needs to be in place.
Thank you very much. Simon, anything that we haven't yet heard that you'd like to add in your glimpse into the future from your table?
What should be done differently? The regulated DPI should be changed. There should be a different regulator instead of the DPI. They've had too much of an opportunity since 1944 to do it, and they're obviously not capable of doing it. Penalties should be put in place for mismanagement or not doing the job properly. The health impact study, I think was already mentioned, should have a clean-up plan ready and on hand. Like I believe they have an evacuation plan, which no one ever heard about. But if they're going to have an evacuation plan, they should have a clean-up plan. They should have other plans in place so they can just pull them out and say, this is the plan, this is what we need to do. WorkSafe needs to have a format for acceptable dose and standards. WorkSafe needed to be involved much earlier, not just because they were not for them to just come out and say, don't use the pressure sprayers, but to be involved in everything, especially for employees who were told, if you don't come to work, you lose your job. You know, so some sort of safety net for employees, employers, you know, so they haven't got to force their staff to come into work, so they're not going to lose money. What's this? Don't tell one thing and do another. For example, the council gave us pressure sprayers and changed it and said, don't have pressure sprayers, can't use them. But then late at night, the council has pressure sprayers going down High Street and main streets, pressure spraying the buildings. this is questions that, towards it. Why was it not covered up and sorted out years ago? What happened between 1944 and 2006 that makes the mine more important than people? What between 1944 and 2006, there was no fire. So the last one was in 2004. They had an inquiry, or was it a Royal Commission? They had an inquiry in 1944, and so there was no fire from then till 2006. What's changed for them, not now looking after the community and wanting to look after the mine instead? Did I get that right? Question, what should be a real rehabilitation? Don't just say do a rehabilitation and then leave them to make their own mind up. There should be a step-by-step plan. You need to do this, this and this by this date, this date, this date. Move the magical, invisible wall at the train line. Sorry, that was just to try and make you smile.
No, I think we understand what you mean.
And the process and jurisdiction of the inquiry, there was a question about Royal Commission inquiry and things like that. What each one has jurisdiction over to do and to say. Was that?
Yeah, well,
yep.
Also there was a lot of rules
James?
and regulations.
Do you want to just
there was a lot of rules and regulations that came from the 1944 Royal Commission, and what we'd like to know, the people in the Valley, was when the SEC was privatised, were the laws abolished, or do those laws still apply?
Okay. All right. Anything else, Simon, that's
One
still
more.
on your list?
One more, which was you asked a question about informing people better.
Yes, and I'll pick that one up at the end if we haven't already covered it.
Yeah, well, we got one down is that it's Easter holidays. Most people have taken their kids and they've gone to get a break.
Okay, yes,
so it's great that the inquiry was here, and we love that the inquiry was here, but I think doing it in Easter holidays has been a bit of a lapse, a loss of people, because people have grabbed their kids and said, we're out of here.
So it's not the method or the inquiry coming here, it's that people are...
Yeah, I think it's
we just haven't got everybody
it's a timing.
Yeah, okay.
So if you was to wait until school comes back next week, and I know it's a hard job for the people in the inquiry, and you was to run sessions next week, I think you would find you'd have full sessions.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else that we haven't yet heard that this table can contribute to?
The only one that came up again was the mental health issues, and that we may have ongoing issues there that may need to be addressed, and monitoring of earth movements, maybe getting Monash Hydrology to have a look at what's happening as a result of the fires. So, yeah, there's still some ongoing issues there. And it was also felt that we need to have faith in our community leadership, and at the moment there's some bridges to be built.
Thank you. Would anybody else now like to add to that list of looking into the future, what needs to happen, improvements, anything that we haven't yet already heard of and picked up? Do you mind standing and just letting us know what you'd like to say on that?
I suppose this probably goes without saying, but I'd like to say that any plans or regulations that get developed out of this for anyone needs to be regularly reviewed and reevaluated, because if this doesn't happen again for another 10 or 20 years, there's no good having a plan, an evacuation plan for Morwell, because in 20 years' time it's going to be completely different. So there needs to also be a plan of regular review and evaluation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to contribute at this point? Thank you.
Just possibly as part of the evacuation plan is a register of residents who are happy to take in vulnerable people. We volunteered our home. We were up in the top of tyres, and whilst we're still copping a little bit, we figured if we could have taken one or two families from Morwell, 4-bedroom house, plenty of room, we got onto a register, and my husband had to fill it in 3 times. He got 2 phone calls and then had to fill in a form. 3 times we said, yes, we're happy to take families or elderly people. We thought was probably easier. Then we didn't have to go through police checks or children checks and things like that. He went to the local RSL and just said if anyone wants to come to our place, and he was told, no, you can't just do that. So, you've got to go through a government organisation and register as an evacuation centre. So no one came to our house, so we sat there for 4 weeks going, we could help some of these people. Okay. So that was disappointing.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else on that question of looking into the future and what we still need to pay attention to? Thanks, Ron.
Got the sniffles. We did some stuff on the question of people that couldn't attend.
Yes, I'm interested in that.
Because we've been doing a lot of online surveys and been contacting people over the net. The last one we did was specifically asking the 3 questions that you guys are asking here, and we actually did bring some in today. There's 8 or 10 responses from people that couldn't make the inquiry, answering these specific questions and also anything else. They're I didn't put them on the table and speak to them because they're pretty much the same as what we've been saying.
Okay.
Yeah. No, everybody. Everybody says the same thing. Everybody says, Rosemary lied to us, and I all say this same sort of thing,
Ron,
everybody could have done better. I all say that.
Who set up the survey?
I did.
So you made that happen? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Come over there. And now, really, if you've got any other issues that don't sit inside those 3 questions but you've really come here to tell us about, let's make sure that we pick those up before we close the day. Thanks, Heather.
Last night I sent out probably 50 or so emails to different community groups because I've spoken to a few and they feel that the inquiry is going to contact them rather than the other way around.
Well,
so there's a little bit of misinformation. A lot of places aren't operating at this time, as already been said. So, sporting groups, leisure centres, all sorts of things. Okay. Even education departments are thinking that you guys will be contacting them to make some investigation.
That's very helpful information, thank you.
Yeah, it's quite a dangerous thing when there's so many sectors of the community that's not fronting up or writing submissions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, I really appreciate you saying that. And yes, any other advice that you've got of that sort's very helpful if we can pick that up across the next couple of minutes, and I'll come around to you in just a moment.
The only thing that I can sort of think of at the moment is if anything like this happens again, or whether it's coal fire or anything else, that people are offered assistance regardless of their status, station or income. There was a lot of people who were unable to have any assistance and still cannot get assistance because they don't hold that magic healthcare card. Yes. That doesn't mean they can afford to do any of this. There's a lot of people who can't afford to get their houses cleaned because they don't have insurance or the insurance companies don't cover it. They're not eligible for part of that clean-up package because they're not home care clients or meet the other criteria that they've got in place for that. And a lot of people, for me as a parent who picked up a child from school who said, "Mummy, I don't want to go home because my home hurts me," because his house did hurt him, I couldn't leave. I had a mortgage. I couldn't get up and take my children away. Who was going to pay my mortgage while I paid accommodation?
Thank you for saying that. I'll come round. There's another point over here, and I'm just on the way through. Anyone else that's got a point or an issue they want to raise? It looks like we've probably... I'll come back to you. No, it's keeping me fit. I appreciate it. Thanks, Graham.
Just with the clean-up at Morwell, they're offering the high-pressure hoses, and a lot of the old houses in Morwell have got asbestos, and when you hit it with high-pressure hoses, it could cause all sorts of trouble.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that I'm a school counsellor at Hazelwood North, and Hazelwood North Primary School is east of the actual mine. We had the smoke and ash and kids holding their noses out there. They didn't like the smell of that, but then I rang the Department of Education and they said it's all up to the school principal to shut the school down or close the school. They kept going all through that, all through the fire was going and everything like that, but they can close down 2 schools here, on the south side or on the north side of the mine, but just across the road from the mine they couldn't close that school.
Thank you. Simon, I think we're getting very close to perhaps you having the final word.
I think it's just the same as Craig said. I'm on the school council for my daughter's school. She's here today because she's been affected as well. She had a nosebleed one day. She was just sitting at home, her nose just started bleeding for no reason at all, and we went straight to the assessment centre. But on the school council of our school, we had our AGM during the middle of the mine fire. And the principal came up and said, we've been asked if we want to move to school during this time, and we've made a decision, no, we're going to keep the school here, which we thought was pretty crazy, because there's days where you couldn't see very clearly. And I think that's another thing. If a decision's going to be made, which the Education Department made a decision, we're moving Commercial Road, we're moving Sacred Hearts, they should have just said, we're moving them all, regardless of where they've got to go, regardless of how far they've got to go. I wouldn't have cared if I had to drive to Warragul to go and pick up my daughter from school every day, because I knew she was going to be safer and a lot happier.
Thank you. Any other advice about how we might pick up on issues for people that we haven't yet caught? We've just got a couple of minutes left. I'm just going to go to someone who hasn't yet had the microphone, and then I'll come back, Amanda, and I think you might be the last person. Susan. Hi.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I went into the emergency place in the ambulance station.
Okay.
And the reason I went in there about a week after, maybe 2 weeks after it started, was because for some funny reason I didn't have a voice. This is not my normal voice. And I've had to put a 90-minute talk, back till next week, just so that I have a voice. So, somebody please answer me why I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. I'm not happy.
Thank you. Amanda.
I just want to know if, with everything that's happened, our water systems and stuff, our drinking water and everything, do we need to boil our water at the moment, or are we supposed to just leave it as it is? Are we drinking
you want
chemicals?
That piece of information, don't you?
And that as well, because I've got a whole bunch of fish, and all my fish have died bar one. My one fish that's left has big bobbly eyes now that it didn't have before. So I'm just wondering if all the stuff in the air has gotten into our water and food supplies.
Anyone else? Then at that point, I might say thank you before Sonia closes the meeting. From my point of view, I really appreciate the time that you've made and the effort to come here and the opportunity to hear from each of you, and that you've given other people around the table a really good opportunity to say things, and that you've been frank and candid and open with us. So I really take the points that you've made about others who we perhaps haven't reached, so I really appreciate that. I appreciate your ideas and your suggestions and your frankness, and for saying yes to being part of a really important process. I've really appreciated your cooperation today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I endorse those thank yous, as I'm sure Bernard and John do too. So could we just give Chris a round of applause for the professional way that she's conducted the discussions. So on behalf of the inquiry, thanks again. Appreciated you allowing us to sit in and to listen to your tables. So Bernard and John and I were sitting on the tables, as well as the other members of the team being able to participate, and it's rich information that will certainly help us in our inquiry. So thanks again for your time, for your candour, and for the information provided to us. And we'll look forward to speaking again. Thank you.
12th of May, make sure that you take spare copies of cover sheets or contact lists before you go away today, particularly for those people who haven't been able to come. And travel safely. Good wishes for the next period of time.